Hi, I'm Josh. Welcome to my channel. Today, I'm going to be giving you my backlist TBR for books published in the 80s and 90s. If you missed my last backlist TBR video, basically, the short end of it is I have a goal to read more backlist titles, specifically at least 20 books before the 21st century. 10 of those were before the 80s, and the next 10 will be for the 80s and 90s. Part of that is, yes, I still have a recency bias. This list is going to be heavy in the speculative fiction, horror, sci-fi, and fantasy. But as with the last list, I made an effort, a concerted effort to make sure I was seeking out nonfiction titles as well as just other books that aren't necessarily speculative. One thing I'm not doing, I want to make clear, is actively seeking out classics, simply because they're classics. I have nothing against classics. The difference is I am targeting classics that I think are going to interest me, not classics just because they're well regarded. I've tried that before. It wasn't successful. And the goal of this is to find books that will resonate with me, that I will really like. That said, let's get straight into it. Let's talk about the top 10 books that I plan on reading from the 80s and 90s in 2024. I forgot to mention, all the speculative books that I have are linked in a speculative backlist of over 100 books on Google Sheets that I'll link to below if you're curious about seeing that. That's sort of what I did on my journey of finding books that I want to read. I started with the speculative fiction. Obviously, these are top 10 books from these 2 decades that I'm interested in. This one's going to be from least interested to most interested. I'm going to work my way towards those that excite me the absolute most, and I'll talk about why. First up at number 10, published in 1981, Little Big by John Crowley. 538 pages, meaning it's a pretty lengthy book. This is a fantasy and magical realist that has tomes of whimsicalness and philosophical family saga. It's an epic tale blending the everyday with the extraordinary, magical, and multi-generational. And this is one that I actually was unsure about putting on here. I talk about me choosing books I think I'm going to like, and this is probably one of those examples where I might be venturing a bit more into the unknown, because I think this is something that could be really impactful, or could just be a bit of a slog. I don't know what to expect. I've never heard this book before, but I heard basically it's this family that's like isolated from a bunch of people, spans multiple generations. I love philosophical books and I love fantasy, so I think this is one that could actually hit pretty hard. Whether or not I like it, I guess we'll find out. Again, that's why it's on the top of this list, because I'm interested, but I think I'm a little hesitant for reasons that part of it being I never heard of it before, despite it seeming interesting, the basic premise. Moving on to number 9, published in 1995, The Color of Distance by Amy Thompson. This is 464 pages. It's science fiction, deals with environmental, cultural change, and alien life. The premise being an Earth biologist becomes stranded on an alien planet and undergoes a transformation to live among the natives. This one fascinates me. I don't know how hard sci-fi it is, or if it ventures into horror, because that was the vibe I was getting when I was looking at the cover. The big reason it's up on this list is because it's not on ebook, it's not on audiobook, it's only on text, which means this is basically 500 pages of book that I'm going to have to sit down and read and commit to, which isn't, I know it seems I should be able to do that, but usually if I want to read something, even if it's not on audio, I'll use text-to-speech, and that's not an option here. But there's something about it, like I got excited about it, and when I found out that it wasn't on audio or even ebook, I think part of that was the realization that it was sort of removed from it. The difficulty of getting access to it was part of the excitement, on top of just the astrobiology implications that sort of look at alien life and wondering how this will be handled. I believe I remember correctly, Amy Thompson is herself a biologist or a scientist of some sort. So I think there's some real potential to see this premise explored in a really fascinating and immersive way. I love the idea of thinking about alien life from a much more abstract level than we see in a lot of popular fiction, whether it be in book or film or TV. Next up, at number 8, published in 1996, Reel to Reel by Bell Hooks, about 300 pages. This is nonfiction film criticism. It's analytical and feminist perspective with cultural critique. It's a series of essays dealing with race and gender and class in media and film. I've read other books like this or this topic. I think the reason I sought this one out, one thing when I thought of this, my backlist titles I want to get to, I knew I had to read Bell Hooks. I recently realized she has a huge backlog, all of which on audio, by the way. I'm realizing now she's going to be someone that I go through, perhaps slowly, perhaps not so slowly, we'll see. I read her book a couple of years ago, did read one last year, and I thought to myself, I would definitely want to read one this year. I don't know if this is the right choice. I heard mixed reviews about this book, but I love film and TV, like the things that I love most: politics, reading, film, TV. These are the things I get most excited about and engaged with. And I just would really love to see the intersection of film and TV with cultural criticism, race, and gender discussion. That's why I'm prioritizing this book among all of her others. Next up at number 7, published in 1987, is Dawn by Octavia Butler. This is about 250 pages. It's science fiction, dystopian alien contact, and ethical dilemma as a woman awakens aboard an alien spaceship to find that she has been chosen to revive Earth after a nuclear holocaust. And frankly, that's the most I've ever read about Dawn. I love Octavia Butler. I've read almost all of her entire backlog, except for this. I always get confused with Xenomorph, but it's Xeno something quartet of books, I think it is, maybe 3 books. But maybe you can see a theme here where we're having another book dealing with aliens and sci-fi, but also this was just me wanting to get to Octavia Butler. And at this point, it's all I have left is this series. So naturally, I'm going to be reading Dawn. Whether or not I get excited to read the next one, I'm not sure. I don't like the idea of rushing through what little bit of Octavia Butler books that I have left, at least unread. If you've never read Octavia Butler, first off, you should. But she deals with themes of power, race, gender, basically just ideas that I love to see explored in fiction, and she does it really well, really thoughtfully. One of my favorite authors of all time. Next up at number 6, published in 1994, The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell. About 400 pages, it's science fiction, philosophical, religious exploration, and first contact. We arguing with aliens. It's about a Jesuit priest who leads a mission to make the first contact with an alien race with unexpected and tragic consequences. You know, I'm realizing this sounds a lot like Contact, but instead of a scientist, it is a religious individual. Sparrow is one that I've heard amazing things about. It's one that I've seen highlighted as a popular sci-fi for a long time. I don't know why I picked it up. I think I thought it was YA, and maybe it is, and I just didn't note it down. I'm shocked by myself. I made this list, I read through it, and I'm just now realizing there were at least three first contact stories dealing with aliens, which is just funny because I don't think any of these are necessarily hard sci-fi. I guess maybe the color distance. I'm rambling at this point. Just know that I'm interested. I love the concept of aliens and the potential when it comes to how that intersects with humanity, but also how it reflects the dynamics that we have among ourselves. That's why I think aliens can be so interesting in sci-fi science fiction. Then next up at number 5, published in 1999, we have Carl Sagan Alive by Kai Davidson. This is 540 pages. It's a biography about Carl Sagan's life, detailing his life as an astronomer, cosmologist, and a popular science communicator. This is one that's been on my TBR for years. I've only just recently finally got it transferred to text-to-speech. I debated how many books that are already pretty much on my ongoing TBR, just a matter of when I'm going to get to it on this list, meaning there were other books on this list, my last list, not on this list, rather, that I do intend to read. I don't know, I wanted to use this opportunity to mostly introduce myself to new things that I wasn't already actively thinking I want to read that. But this is an exception, because this is it's a nonfiction published in the 80s and 90s. So I just felt like it fit well here. And it's also something that I just know I really want to read this year. Then at number 4, published in 1992, we have Lost Futures by Lisa Tuttle. 224 pages. This is a multiversal story that looks at the life of this one woman who is trying to, reflect on her life choices. It is horror and sci-fi. I'm reading this for a project. The same project that I alluded to in my last backlist TBR. I'm not going to say what it's for. I was looking for books that were multiversal, and I wanted to read something new, and I came across this book that was both multiversal and horror, and there was just something about it that seemed really tantalizing, really exciting rather. But I loved the idea of using a multiversal story from a horror lens. There's some real potential there. This book is something I've never heard of. Oh, it was a nominee for the Arthur C. Clarke Award, which I guess may be part of the reason how I found it. But I just love the idea of the intersection of two things I love, multiverse and horror. The fact that this is underrated, I really want to love this. And I think I really could, because of the philosophical implications that I expect it'll be exploring as we look at her reflecting on her life choices, split between these different multiverses or what, I'm not quite sure. I just sort of premise, the genre, it all comes together to make me super excited. That is number 4. Moving up to number 3, Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. About 300 pages, it's fantasy and comedy, it's apocalyptic satirical, about an angel and demon who get accustomed to life on Earth and befriend one another. I've watched the show, so I know what's going to happen pretty much. I don't know why I've never read this. I think Neil Gaiman is an author who I like. but for whatever reason, maybe I haven't picked him up mostly because I think he's just very popular, which isn't quite fair because I also know he's a very reflective author, an author who learns and grows, and that's definitely what I love to see from authors that I read. This is another example of one of those books that was already on my TBR to be read, but it wasn't one I had prioritized. So I figured it made it okay, this list was a good way to push it up my priority list, to get me to read it, being a book that I know it stands out of my mind as something I think I'll love, both for the feel, but also the philosophical implications. The show, I think, is just really interesting how it sort of circumvents certain religious expectations, but I also just love the queer love story between Crowley and the angel. I don't remember, although I'm not sure if that's explicit in the book. The third season, I think, has been officially announced, which I'm super excited for. Now up to number 2. Published in 1993, we have Einstein's Dreams by Alan Lightman, a 145-page short story collection that deals with philosophy, dreamlike, theoretical physics type stories, a fictional collage of stories dreamed by Albert Einstein in 1905, each exploring different concepts of time. I was first introduced to this, I think, by Bookstallala. I just remember she didn't like it very much. However, I've heard other people talk about it. Audrey from Audrey Approved talked about the short story collection. I don't remember if she liked it or not. I just know that both their conversations about it, it was really intriguing. Partly because I already know I love time. I love stories about time travel, stories that deal with the concept of time on a philosophical level and on just a physical level when we talk about the implications for reality, which is why I've just been really intrigued about this book. And again, this is similar, probably not quite the same as Good Omens in the sense that it's been on my radar for a long time. If I'm going to be reading books from the 80s and 90s and picking up books that are most exciting me, I have to say this one. That's why it's number 2. Why it's not number 1? Honestly, I thought you could go either way depending on how I feel. Because right now I'm thinking maybe it's number 1. That's okay. I'm excited about it nonetheless. But let's get the one that I have decided to put number 1. Published in 1995, remake by Connie Willis. 256 pages of science fiction, speculative fiction. Satirical, thought-provoking, dystopian, dealing with film and cinema. It's set in a future where movies are made digitally and actors are a thing of the past. A young man dreams of making a movie the old-fashioned way. I'm pretty sure it has to do with basically a world where films are made by AI or the actors are AI. And it just felt so damn prescient considering where we're at today with the recent strikes, writer's strike and the actor's strike, actively fighting the use of AI in their industry. It's a terrifying potential, perhaps even likely future. I just think there's a real potential to be discussed in a really intriguing, thoughtful way. Connie Willis is someone that I know is very highly regarded, at least when it comes to her time travel works, the Oxford Time Travel series. Actually, I've read the first one, not the second one, because I just wasn't quite vibing with it for whatever reason. I actually came very close to including those books on this list, because I love time travel more than anything, as I just alluded to in my last option. And I do intend to read those, maybe even this year, who knows? Maybe I'll return to Say Nothing with the Dog. There was just, when I was looking at all her books, I saw this one and it just seemed too prescient to pass up. That's why it's number 1 on this list. Again, the order I get to these is may fluctuate, but big picture, it is just one book that I'm really eager to get to, as I think it could just have a really relevant conversation. But overall, I'm really excited for all of these, to be frank. I think they're all really intriguing. Some of them are obviously already on my radar. Others were completely alien to me, which isn't an intended pun. But I'm just really excited about this list, probably even more so than my last one. As we get to more recent backlist titles, I think there's just more potential for those to excite me for whatever reason. And I'm just really, really excited to be getting to them. Part of the reason I'm pushing these out so close together, I assume, is because I want to start reading them, and I don't want to record this TBR after I've actually started reading them. So I'm sort of filming them all together just so I can at least talk about my expectation to read them, even if by the time this goes up, I may have already read some of them. Let me know your thoughts on all these books. Are there any books that you want to read from those decades, or books that you think I really should be prioritizing? Because these are far from the only books that I want to read. As I said, there was a Google Sheet list below that I'll link to that I've been making, backlist speculative fiction before the 2010s. So if you're interested in seeing that, you can even recommend some books to add onto that. I would love help finding new books that I think will be exciting and interesting. But either way, I appreciate your attention, your time, and for watching this. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, give it a like, subscribe. I don't know. I don't usually do that. But I really appreciate your time. I hope you all have a great day. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.